Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something that honestly trips up so many businesses, especially when they're trying to grow. It's that feeling, when you, as the leader, feel like you're the main engine, the only one pushing things forward, but everything just keeps grinding to a halt. And you hear that phrase, oh, we've just always done it this way. It's incredibly frustrating. So, our mission today really is to get into the skin of that. We want to unpack this idea that the resistance you feel, it's usually not the core problem. It's more like a symptom, a signal flare, maybe, from a system that's accidentally become totally dependent on you. We're going to look at what we're calling the causato candida syndrome, what happens when that dependency goes wrong, and map out, a practical way to fix it, not just for growth, but for real scalability and, honestly, getting some freedom back.
Yeah, and that reframing is so critical right from the start because the real conflict often boils down to this figure, the hero leader. This is usually someone brilliant, tireless, visionary even, but they make themselves completely indispensable. They create this kind of gravitational pull around them, a dependence that gets so strong it eventually just stops everything cold. And this is the tough part, maybe the hard pill to swallow. The problem isn't necessarily your team or the market or anything else out there. Often the root of the problem is looking back at you in the mirror each morning. It's you. In trying to be the hero, you've accidentally built a system that's kind of designed to fall apart the second you step away or can't swoop in with that brilliant fix. The dependency is the system.
And it's so easy, isn't it, to see someone push back on a new idea and just thinking, okay, they're being difficult or they're lazy or they just don't get it.
Hmm.
That feels like the default hero leader reaction.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we need to just, ditch that perspective entirely. We've got to reframe resistance. It's not sabotage. Think of it more like a desperate cry from a team that hasn't actually been empowered to think for themselves. They haven't been given the real ownership of the solution. So when change comes along, all they see is a threat to how they do things, maybe their status, their job security even. They haven't been given the authority, the structure, to see it as an opportunity they can shape. If you're always the one with the answer, you're basically teaching them to just wait for you.
Okay, let's make this concrete. You mentioned the causato candida syndrome. This sounds like a really important, maybe cautionary tale. Tell us about that.
It seems like a key example of how individual brilliance doesn't automatically mean the organization lasts. We're talking about Salvador Lopez Chavez, right? This wasn't some average manager. This guy built a massive footwear empire, a true giant. The definition of a hero leader, it sounds like. His sheer force of will drove incredible growth. He was absolutely a titan. And that's exactly why this story is so powerful and, frankly, so cautionary. He was, for all intents and purposes, a one-man leadership team. His genius was undeniable, but his fatal flaw wasn't in his vision or his drive. It was his complete failure to build a system, a structure that could function without him being personally involved in everything. So when he wasn't there anymore, the whole thing just couldn't sustain itself. It collapsed. The leadership model was totally reliant on him. Think about how a company like that actually runs day to day. Chavez probably held all the crucial relationships, the key knowledge, in his head. Vendor deals, tricky supply chain stuff, big quality decisions. It likely all funneled through him. And yeah, when he was there, firing on all cylinders, the company did brilliantly. But he missed two critical things needed for longevity. First, he delegated tasks, go do this specific thing exactly like this. But he kept all the real authority. The final say always rested with him. And second, he just didn't build a system that could operate on its own. It needed his constant heroic input, his ability to jump in and fix any crisis.
Wow. So instead of building something lasting, an institution, he unintentionally built, well, like you said, a monument to his own effort. And monuments crumble when the person holding them up isn't there anymore. The core support, his personal intervention vanishes, and the whole thing falls down.
It's almost inevitable, really, and this is the shift we need to grasp. The goal for what we call an elite leader isn't just success now. It's building an organization, a machine almost, that runs perfectly, whether you're in the building or, on a beach somewhere. That's the required mental shift. Moving away from the hero leader model, which is ultimately doomed, towards the elite leader model.
And what defines that elite leader? What do they focus on?
The elite leader has one primary objective: building empires, organizations that endure. They understand deep down that creating systems and distributing intelligence throughout the organization is far more important than their own individual brilliance. So if Calzado Canada is the warning sign, the flashing red light, then the model we really need to study to emulate is Toyota.
Toyota. Okay, everyone knows them for operational excellence, lean manufacturing, all that. But looking at them through this specific lens, overcoming that internal resistance, getting past the hero model, what's the core philosophy that lets them do that?
Well, fundamentally, the Toyota model just throws out the whole idea that the leader has to be the smartest person in the room. They flipped the script. Their whole focus is on creating a system where intelligence, ideas, solutions, they flow actively from the bottom up. They don't sit around waiting for some genius CEO to spot every problem and dictate the perfect answer. Instead, they invest heavily in teaching every single person on the team how to identify problems and how to find the answers themselves. They operate on this core belief, really, that the person actually doing the job day in, day out, the worker on the assembly line, the customer service rep on the phone, they have the most valuable, detailed knowledge. They know where the real friction points are, the inefficiencies, the potential dangers. A CEO might see a high-level metric like a 10% defect rate, but the person on the line, they know exactly which machine setting or which supplier's material batch is causing it. That granular knowledge is gold.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do they actually get that bottom-up flow working? It can't just be suggestion boxes, right? We all know those usually end up being black holes in most companies, especially ones run by hero leaders.
No, definitely not suggestion boxes. It's much more formalized, and importantly, it's immediate. A perfect example is the famous Toyota Andon cord system. Think about this. If any worker at any level spots a problem, a defect, an abnormality, anything, they don't fill out a form or wait for a supervisor. They have the authority, in fact, they have the mandate, to pull that cord. And pulling the cord stops the entire production line.
Whoa, stop the whole line, just like that. From a productivity perspective, that sounds, well, terrifying. A hero leader would likely never allow that level of control at the lowest level. They'd freak out.
Exactly. The hero leader sees that line stoppage purely as lost time, lost output. It's inefficiency. But the elite leader, the Toyota mindset, sees that stoppage as the single most valuable moment for learning and improvement. The goal isn't just to quickly patch the problem and restart the line. The goal is to swarm the problem, understand the root cause, and fix it so thoroughly that it never happens again. The Anodon system basically decentralizes quality control. It puts real authority and intelligence right where the work is happening, ensuring that crucial knowledge surfaces instantly. So the leader's job shifts, doesn't it? It's less about having the answers and more about building and maintaining this operating system that constantly surfaces intelligence.
That distinction is huge. Installing the system versus being the solution provider. That really feels like the core of this whole transformation. But okay, how do we actually get there? How do we move from a culture that's stuck in, we've always done it this way, dominated by heroic fixes, to installing this kind of new OS? Let's pivot now to the practical steps. You mentioned 4 competencies. These sound like the roadmap for making this change happen, for getting that scalability and, yes, that personal freedom for the leader.
Right. We need more than just theory. We need a clear methodology.
Okay, competency number 1. And you said this is the toughest one because it goes right at the leader's ego. It's transforming your own leadership, framed as the challenge of humility.
This is it. This is where you, the leader, have to consciously, actively quit playing the role of the hero. You have to stop yourself from automatically assuming your idea is the only one, or even the best one. Because think about it. If you're always the one solving the problems, always swooping in, you're actually training your team to be helpless. They learn to just wait for you because your actions constantly tell them their input isn't really needed or maybe even wanted. And we need to redefine humility here. In leadership, it's not about being meek or a pushover, not at all. Humility is the intelligence to recognize that the most valuable, actionable knowledge often resides right there on the front lines, with the people doing the work every single day. The elite leader's true intelligence lies in knowing how to tap into that collective knowledge, not in trying to know everything themselves.
That's a huge psychological shift, though. I mean, let's be honest. Being the hero feels good, right? Getting that call at 2 a.m. because you're the only one who can fix it. There's an ego boost there. How do you get leaders to willingly step back from being indispensable?
You manage it through structure, not just willpower. You replace that reactive, addictive crisis management with proactive, structured inquiry. So when your team inevitably hits you with that classic line, but we've always done it this way, your response cannot be to just force the change through. That just reinforces their dependency. Instead, you deploy a specific mechanism, a tool designed to shift the authority.
And that mechanism is what you call the 4 definitive questions. These sound like the specific tool set to push the team past just defending the status quo and into actually solving the problem. Let's break those down. Question 1. What problem are we actually trying to solve with the current process? Seems basic, but why is this the starting point?
It sounds simple, but it's often incredibly revealing. It forces everyone to establish a shared understanding of the current reality. So often, that process they're fiercely defending the way it's always been done was put in place years ago to solve a problem that maybe doesn't even exist anymore or has changed dramatically. Asking this makes the team articulate the purpose. And if they struggle to answer it clearly, well, the justification for the old process starts to crumble right there. You're questioning the process, not the people.
Makes sense. Okay, question 2. What opportunities are we losing by continuing to do it this way? This shifts the focus outward, right?
Exactly. It forces them to lift their heads up and look beyond just their immediate task or internal efficiency. Think about the competition, potential cost savings, maybe market agility, customer satisfaction. It pulls them out of the operational weeds and into the strategic impact of sticking with the old way.
And question 3, this feels like the core challenge. How could we do it to make it, say, 20% faster or cheaper or more efficient? Why that specific kind of measurable target?
This provides a concrete, ambitious, but not impossible goal. It signals, okay, I don't just want a minor tweak, I need a significantly better way, and I trust you to figure out how to get there.
Wait, let me push back on that slightly. If competency 1 is all about humility and letting the answers flow up, isn't setting a specific target like 20% better still kind of top down? Isn't that the leader imposing something?
That's a really sharp question, and it highlights the nuance here. Yes, the leader sets the target, but it's crucial how it's framed. The 20% isn't a dictation of how to achieve it. It's setting the level of ambition for the innovation required. If you just ask for improvement, you might get a tiny 1% change. A number like 20% forces them to think fundamentally differently, to challenge the core assumptions of the old process. It basically gives them permission to be radical in their thinking, but the design of the solution is entirely up to them.
Okay, I get that. It's defining the scope of the challenge, not the solution itself.
Precisely. And that leads to the final question, number 4. What risks does this potential change introduce, and how can we mitigate them? This directly addresses the fear that naturally comes with change. You're not just asking for a shiny new process, you're asking them to anticipate the problems. You're essentially asking for a built-in failure analysis and making them responsible for designing the safety net before you even start.
So, taken together, these 4 questions completely flip the dynamic. The leader stops being the dictator of solutions and becomes more like the client, defining the outcome needed. You're basically turning the team into the consultants for their own problem. They own the diagnosis, they own the solution design, and crucially, they own the risk mitigation. That feels like real ownership.
It is, and that ownership is the perfect bridge to the second competency, which is all about strategically deploying that new authority. Forge high-performance teams by really understanding how to delegate authority, not just tasks.
This feels like where the theory hits the ground. What's the core distinction here?
It's absolutely fundamental. The hero leader delegates tasks. They give people a to-do list, maybe with detailed instructions, and expect them to just execute. Compliance is the goal. The elite leader delegates genuine authority. And that's different. When a team resists change under a hero leader, it's often because, frankly, they have no real skin in the game. If the new process the boss forced on them fails, what happens? They can just shrug and say, hey, I just did what I was told. There's no ownership, no accountability, really. The hero often thinks they're empowering people by saying, go figure it out, but then they hold back the budget, or the necessary headcount, or the final decision-making power. That's not authority, that's just setting people up to fail or get frustrated. Authority without resources is meaningless.
Okay, so how do you instill that genuine ownership, that real authority? The approach mentioned in the material is interesting, creating these pilot teams, but picking the members in a way that seems almost backward at first glance. The strategy says to select not just experienced people, but specifically the most resistant members, the biggest skeptics, to design and test the new process. Why on earth would you start with the naysayers?
But it's strategically brilliant. Think about it. It bypasses potentially years of built-up cynicism and baggage. If you only pick the usual suspects, the cheerleaders, the innovators, everyone else in the organization can easily dismiss the results. Oh, that's just Sarah's pet project. Or, of course, they made it work. They had special resources. But if you take your most vocal critics, the ones who truly understand the old way inside and out, the ones who can list every single reason why your new idea won't work, and you give them the power to design a better way, and they actually succeed, their validation becomes incredibly powerful, undeniable almost. They become your most authentic, most credible champions for the change precisely because they were initially skeptical. If they say the new way works, having designed part of it, who's going to argue?
That makes a lot of sense. Turn the biggest potential roadblocks into the lead engineers of the new road. And then the crucial next step is giving them real authority, the budget, the decision power, but containing the experiment initially. Keep it small, in a pilot area first.
Absolutely essential. Contain the blast radius of the experiment. The elite leader's instruction here is crystal clear. Here's the result we need. For example, reduce customer onboarding time from 7 days to 3 days, starting just within the West Coast region. Now, you figure out the best way to achieve that result. Design the process, choose the tools, plan the rollout within this pilot. The leader defines the what and the why, but the team owns the how.
And the outcome, you call it the ambassador effect.
Yeah.
These formerly resistant, experienced folks, having achieved the goal with their own designed process, naturally become the best possible advocates for rolling it out more widely. They built it, they proved it, they own it. They can answer the tough questions from their peers because they've lived it.
Exactly. They've transformed from obstacles into the most effective change agents you could possibly have.
Okay, this sounds great for the pilot team. But let's be real. When that successful pilot starts to get rolled out, you're going to hit friction, right? The rest of the organization, the people not on the pilot team, might feel left out, threatened, or just plain resistant to something they didn't create. That pushback seems inevitable. Which I guess brings us neatly to the third competency: dominate constructive conflict. The idea here is to actually learn how to turn resistance into an ally.
That friction isn't just inevitable, it's necessary. And it's valuable data. We have to keep hammering this point. Resistance isn't something to be crushed or ignored. It's information, a gold mine, really. It usually comes from very predictable, very human places. Fear of the unknown, fear of losing status or expertise, fear of making mistakes under the new system and getting blamed. The elite leader doesn't try to silence dissent. They see it as a crucial part of the innovation process. It helps surface potential problems before they blow up. Look, if you just ignore that resistance or try to overpower it, those fears don't go away, they just go underground. They might pop up later as subtle sabotage or maybe just half-hearted implementation, a lack of real buy-in. So the goal has to be to bring those fears, those criticisms out into the open, formalize them, let the team collectively dissect them and figure out how to address them. You can't solve a fear you haven't even acknowledged.
Right. So how do you formalize that? How do you create a safe space for people to voice those potentially negative thoughts without feeling like they're being difficult? The material suggests a specific meeting structure, the 3-step feedback rule. Step 1. You hold this meeting before the new process, even the one designed by the pilot team, gets rolled out widely. The design is done, but it's not yet the official way for everyone. Step 2, and this is key. The only rule for this meeting is that everyone's job is to identify what could go wrong. They are explicitly asked to play devil's advocate. Their task isn't to praise the new system or be supportive, it's to poke holes in it. Find every potential failure point, every overlooked dependency, every hidden risk they can possibly imagine.
Yes. And this is psychologically quite clever. It gives people explicit permission, actually. It gives them the requirement to be critical. Suddenly, voicing concerns isn't being negative or resistant. It's fulfilling a vital quality assurance role. They're stress testing the plan. This changes a whole energy from personal opposition to collaborative system analysis.
Okay, so everyone surfaces the potential problems. Then step 3 defines the leader's role in that meeting. What is it?
The leader's job is absolutely not to defend the plan or shoot down the concerns. No arguing about why someone's fear is irrational. Your role is simply to listen intently, capture all those diverse perspectives, all that collective wisdom about potential failure, and then consolidate it. And then, either in the meeting or afterwards, you work with the team to design or refine a mitigation plan that directly addresses the risks they collectively identified.
Ah, I see. So the outcome is pretty profound. The team goes from potentially being resistant to actually being co-authors of this strengthened, de-risked plan. They see their concerns weren't just heard. They were actively used to make the final approach better and safer. Now they have a stake in making the mitigation plan work because they helped build it. Fear gets channeled into proactive planning.
Precisely. It turns potential adversaries into collaborators in building robustness.
Which leads us perfectly into the fourth and final competency. This is about making sure these improvements aren't just one-off events, but become part of the organizational DNA. It's install systems of continuous improvement, making that crucial shift from effort to process.
Remember that phrase we started with? It's always been done this way. It's not just a sign of resistance. It's a sign that improvement in that organization is treated as a big disruptive event. It usually only happens when the hero leader steps in, marshals a ton of energy, forces a change through, and then everyone collapses in exhaustion until the next crisis. The hero relies on massive bursts of individual effort. But effort is inconsistent. It's draining. It's finite. You burn out. The elite leader knows effort alone isn't scalable or sustainable. So they focus on building robust, predictable processes for improvement. If the only way things get better in your company is when you personally drive it, working insane hours, well, your company can never truly scale beyond your own personal capacity. You're trading long-term scalability for short-term heroic fixes and eventual burnout.
So we need a structured way to make improvement constant and less reliant on those heroic bursts. The practical action here is implementing a system for continuous improvement that's visible and ongoing. And this takes discipline, right? First, pick a key metric that really matters. Maybe it's time, maybe it's errors, maybe cost something tangible that impacts the customer or the bottom line. Second, make that metric and the process performance highly visible, like a dashboard everyone can see, updated regularly, no hiding the numbers.
Visibility is absolutely fundamental. It creates shared accountability. If performance metrics are buried in some manager's spreadsheet, it's easy for the team to ignore problems or assume things are fine. But if that key metric is right there on a screen in the break room or in a daily email report, it becomes everyone's problem to solve. You can't hide from the data.
Then there needs to be a regular rhythm for reviewing it. The suggestion is weekly. The team looks at the dashboard, identifies one specific bottleneck, just one, and focuses their collective brain power on proposing one small, doable improvement for that single issue. It's not about redesigning the entire world every week.
Exactly. This is the heart of Kaizen, the philosophy that's so central to Toyota's success. And the beauty of Kaizen is its simplicity, its relentless focus on small, constant, predictable steps forward. It deliberately avoids those huge, terrifying leaps that often paralyze organizations. The goal is steady, incremental elimination of waste week after week. Think about the cumulative power. If every single team in your company makes just one small, measurable improvement every single week, the overall impact across a year is massive. It's transformative. And this focus on Kaizen, on this structured weekly rhythm, is what replaces that exhausting, occasional heroic effort with a reliable, predictable process that generates improvement almost automatically. The whole mindset shifts from, uh-oh, things are broken, we need the boss to fix it, to, okay, what's our team's small improvement focus for this week?
And embedding that expectation, that process, is what builds the foundation for real, long-term scalable success, moving from dependence on one person's effort to reliance on the system. Okay, this has been incredibly insightful, really breaking down the mechanics of these two opposing leadership approaches. Let's try and synthesize this now. We've basically outlined two very different potential futures, haven't we?
We really have. It boils down to two distinct destinies. Path one is the hero leader. Despite all their talent, their energy, their commitment, their path often leads to burnout for them and eventual stagnation or even extinction for the organization. We saw the extreme example with Calzado Canada. The system is just too fragile because it depends entirely on one person's limited energy. Then there's path two, the elite leader. Their destiny looks very different. It leads to personal freedom for them, yes, but also explosive scalability and a lasting legacy for the organization. Toyota is the prime example here. They succeed because they build a resilient system where intelligence, authority, improvement, it's all distributed. The organization becomes far stronger, far more adaptable than any single individual could ever be.
So for anyone listening, understanding this difference, internalizing these competencies, it allows you to stop firefighting the symptoms, like resistant employees, and start addressing the root cause, the actual design of your leadership system. If you're feeling burned out, constantly being the indispensable engine, this framework, these four competencies, offer a practical way out, a path to stepping back from the daily grind and letting the system work.
Which brings us to the final challenge for everyone listening, a provocative thought to leave you with. The real question isn't about whether you're strong enough or smart enough or dedicated enough to force your team to change. That's the hero leader's game, and it's ultimately a losing one. The defining question for your future and your organization's future is this. Are you willing to stop being the hero? Are you willing to let go of that feeling of indispensability, maybe even the ego gratification that comes with it, in order to become the elite leader? The kind of leader who builds something truly lasting, something that empowers your team and serves your business far beyond your own individual efforts. Are you willing to make that trade?
That willingness, that conscious choice to step back, build the system, and trust the process, that really is the shortcut to scalable impact and ultimately to genuine freedom. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this gives you a powerful new lens to look at your own leadership and your organization.